Hello everyone, how are we all doing? Welcome to the next episode of the NK Active podcast. This is episode 9 and really excited to have our latest member of staff here so we can just learn more about David. So David is our sort of new exercise rehabilitation person in clinic. So David, firstly, welcome to the team.
Thank you very much.
And sort of tell us a bit about your background and how you sort of got to where you are now, as it were.
Okay, as a young guy, I was active, wanted to run around, so joined the military and spent a long time in the military doing various courses. During that time, there were lots of training and I got injured. So I became more interested in the injury side, recovery, went to St Mary's University, did a rehabilitation degree, and since leaving the forces, I've worked in rehabilitation ever since.
And then with regards to then stuff in the forces, were you then sort of directly involved in the rehab within the military side of things as well?
Yes, the military has a group of physical training instructors that it trains to provide exercise and progression back to full military fitness. So as a physical training instructor, I became part of that, worked at the Defence Rehabilitation Centre at Headley Court during the Afghanistan war and saw a lot of distressing things, but a lot of good things as well. So exercise and rehabilitation of people with quite severe injuries and also training and strains and sprains. So a lot of rehab there.
And then also I think when you come out of the MOD, you then also went into doing some stuff in NHS Trust as well?
Yes, worked with the NHS Trust and a private company, exercise rehabilitation, to get people back to work. People who are off work because they're sick, short term and long term, and when is the job too difficult, or when has the person been injured and their functional capacity, when's that dropped down and they're finding the job a little bit too hard, because there is a belief around that we get stiffer and weaker as we get older. Well, actually, we get stiffer and weaker if we stop moving and being active. So there's some beliefs to change and some work to be done.
It's that old saying of use it or lose it, isn't it, really?
Absolutely right. It's so true.
So then with some of the company, I think you've done some work with the fire service as well to help try and reduce their number of days off sick, which then obviously most probably resulted in helping them save some pennies and pounds along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. In an occupational health role where people are off sick, that's a cost to the company. It's a benefit to the staff to be at work, to be able to pay the mortgage, to have a job. And this is things in public health that are quite well recognised. But to be able to do the rehabilitation, to get people back to active jobs, and not always the active jobs like a fireman, but sitting and having postures and lifting and carrying, when's that part of a rehabilitation process? And it's where is exercise called treatment and where is exercise called training, or where is it called work or gardening? It's all movement, and it just depends how it's done and who gives it to you, what your functional capacity is.
So there's one question I want to ask, which is most probably a bit controversial with regards to manual handling and lifting. Now, people will sort of say there is a perfect way to lift. When I was on the NHS, when I was working for the NHS, we were doing manual handling courses, and everyone who's ever been on one's most probably seen that video of a toddler lifting up a block in the playground. Now, I've got my own views and sort of issues with the whole concept around manual handling, but I'm sort of interested to hear what you've got to say with regards to what your thoughts are around that kind of stuff.
No, I think you're absolutely right, and this is where science and the textbook meets the real world, because we know that things aren't always in the perfect position to be lifted, and the science and day-to-day life, anyone who's got a toddler and has tried to put a toddler into a car seat knows the positions that you have to get into. Get your shopping out of the boot of a car. Manhole covers where the stopcock that you might be trying to get has rusted stiff. Positions out there in life. So it's moved away from the perfect position to being flexible enough and looking at your physical ability and the job in hand and making that dynamic risk assessment, or that, yes, this is within my capability, I can do this. Some of the basics of testing weight, where it's going to go, lifting, carrying and moving, still hold true. But that perfect lifting position, I think that started to come more into the real world than straight off the page of the textbook.
I'm so glad that could have been embarrassing, because my thoughts are that I like the analogy of the car seat. I use the analogy of lifting a toddler or a baby out of a cot, and we'll get on to discussion around about your perceptions around and treating back pain in a bit. But we've seen people in the past who sort of say they got this fear of bending because they think their back's going to hurt, but yet they will pick their toddler or baby out of the cot with no issues. And from a back perspective, the back is going through the exact same motion as it would do during the activity that they perceive was going to hurt, but the back doesn't hurt when they lift.
Oh, it's so true. So true that people will hurt their back putting their shoes and socks on in the morning, and then they stop lifting anything heavy but still put their shoes and socks on. So there's a lot of beliefs and a lot of education to be done around keeping ourselves safe and protected but not overprotected, and exercised but not over-exercised.
So what would you say if I because my specialty isn't my specialty is more lower limb than it is back per se, but I still think of it from a load perspective. And this I was keen to someone like yourself who's got vast amounts of experience in managing people's perception around back pain and getting people stronger. My views, which they may be wrong, and correct me if you think I am wrong, is that when we get it's not mainly about the technique that we use to lift something, but is the body accustomed to doing that job. So for example, we have seen people in the past who have retired from their office-based job, but then decide for whatever reason, through whether they want to earn a bit more holiday money or they want to get a little more active, they go and for example, go start working as a postal worker, and they go from not doing much activity at all to walking 10 miles a day. And then they wonder why they get injured. And it's not the job that's injured them, it's the fact that they're not used to doing that amount of activity. And I think, is that the same with regards to, say, if you get someone who has just become an apprentice or something in a building firm, and they may, have to shift, let's say 5 tons of sand a day. It's not the way they're shoveling, or it's not the way they're lifting the sandbags. Is it more of a case of, well, if their body's not used to lifting that amount of load over time, is that more of an issue rather than the way that they lift it in the...
Yeah, quite. I think all these things are on a continuum, and if we had to write a list, they would all be on that list. But then if you had to number that list in terms of importance and put the most important things at the top, and the other things are still on your list,
yes,
but lower down, and we see that sort of thing, load and capacity, all the time. Something new makes the muscles ache. Something, shoveling snow, sweeping leaves, digging the garden. If it's something you haven't done for a while, it can be a shock to the body. Recreational runners, they've signed up for a 10K. They've gone from doing the park run. And it's just that jump in capacity and the training load, or the workload, or whatever we want to call it, that can cause a lot of problems. Classic one is DIY. Someone decides to paint the front room. Next day, the shoulder aches. They haven't hurt their shoulders. The muscles are reacting to the increased or the change of the new activity.
Or is it just an excuse that they don't want to do DIY and they're just using that excuse to get out of doing it?
I'm not saying I've never used that one myself.
Yeah, we won't. If we go down that road, I think we can get ourselves in a lot of trouble. So are there any particular injuries that you particularly like treating compared to others, or different types of people, or what things do you like doing?
I'm exercise based, so if it can be moved, we can treat it, we can train it, we can help. So that can be I've come from an active background. If we've got a sportsman that wants to improve and get some PBs, that's a nice feeling. That always feels good because they're reaching their goals. But on the other side of that, people who don't think the exercise is for them, because I believe it's for everybody. And if I can change that perception, somebody who's got back pain, or I'd like to do that, but my back stops me, or I've had a knee replacement or a hip replacement, or you've had a new part put in, but the bits that make that work are the soft tissues and the muscles and the exercise. So really, I'm very happy across the board. I like making a difference. And I think with the long-term conditions or people who don't think that exercise is really for them, when someone finds the benefits, I find that very satisfying.
Yeah, and I think this is what really stood out through the interview process when we're interviewing for the position that you've now got, is that really fits with our mantra here of the whole get active, stay active, and moving people forwards. And as a clinic, we are very, very passionate about using exercise rehabilitation to help people get back. Because when we look at our feedback, we can see that people sort of comment and say, actually, I've knocked 5 minutes off my 10K time. I am walking the dog twice as far. We're seeing people saying that actually my overall health and mental well-being has improved because I can do more. It doesn't hurt as much. And it's such powerful stuff when you see that happen. And it's one of the things that if you look at most things, there's not many things that exercise can't have a positive impact on.
Absolutely. And I think if you're going to have an operation, if you're as strong or as flexible as you can be before you have that, you're going to recover quicker. If you're not going to have one, the benefits to life and your ability to improve your functional capacity, your mobility, they're very easy to define. And it's such a nice thing when people become more confident, mental health linked with physical health, improve confidence to move, or go back to doing the things that you've stopped or you haven't done for so long. Exercise just links the whole body, mood, general physical health. It's such an important thing. And sometimes it's not always that technical. It's just a little bit of guidance of showing someone that it's not dangerous and you can get a lot of good. You don't have to be an exercise fanatic, but a bit of guidance that exercise is safe and there are a lot of benefits is so rewarding.
And I think it's definitely trying to help break that mold that people don't think the exercise is just for the sporty. It is for everyone. It really doesn't matter if you're 30 or if you're 85. There are still things you can do. And I would actually go to the point and argue it's most probably the older we get, the more important it is, because when you look at things like the risk of falls and trying to reduce the risk of that happening, we know that doing exercise and strengthening and balance work on a regular basis can reduce anything like 30-40% of falls. And unfortunately in the UK, we know that over the age of 65, if you have a fall and you end up in hospital, unfortunately, I think it's something like a 50% mortality rate 5 years later due to complications related to that fall. And he's sort of thinking, well, hang on, if sort of 30-40% of these may have been preventable, that's massive lives you can physically save.
Yeah, you can save life and you can improve the quality of life. So it's such an important thing. Strength training, it's not about bodybuilding for everybody and looking in the mirror. It's about carrying your shopping, putting your shopping, leading an independent life and enjoying that independent life.
Yeah, because if you start doing just a bit of rehab and a bit of strength, you're not going to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger overnight.
No, definitely not. There's a few people that I don't want to look like that.
Yeah.
And he's got a famous quote saying, "Don't worry, you won't." But some strength training, it's very difficult to go for a walk on a sunny day and not feel better. And if you spend the day sat on the sofa having a rest, more energy, do you really feel better at the end of that? Which do you feel sluggish and which do you feel energized?
Oh yeah, it's that thing of, if I'm feeling tired, I'll go do some exercise and I'll have a lot more energized after that. And people think, hang on, you're doing something where you're burning energy, but yet it gives you more energy. And it's
for the people that understand that and have felt that, they go, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. That busy day, very stressed, did exercise, felt better. for the people that maybe haven't felt that, thinking, how does that work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we spoke. You mentioned strength quite a bit, and obviously we're lucky enough here to have these sort of handheld dynamometers, and the dynamometer is a tool for us to quantify how strong someone is. So where do you see the likes of doing strength testing in then helping people through their journey? Where do you think that fits in?
It's fundamental to have a good strength measure. If we don't have that, how do we know if anything's changed? Things always feel heavy. And as we move forwards, we can see the changes that we're making. And if we see the changes, it can be help improve confidence, keep going with the program. If somebody lifts a 10 kilo weight, it's going to be quite heavy. If they keep lifting it, might still be quite heavy. If they lift it a few more times, they're still going to get tired, but we know they've lifted it more times. So a measure at the beginning and as we progress is absolutely essential.
Yeah, and we see it a lot, even when people are wearing all sort of masks in the world we live in at the moment. When we redo the strength testing, we see some people, some measures improve by 300%. The look on that person's face when they see that is just, you could see that they've got a smile from ear to ear. And I think that empowers people so much. And then they know that, okay, what I've been doing for the last few months is working, it is worth it. I'm seeing the benefits. I'm doing more. I'm getting less pain. I'm doing more around the house. I'm doing more exercise. I'm feeling generally better in myself.
Yeah.
Which then empowers them to, then they understand why they need to keep doing this going forward, even though once their pain stops.
For some people, it's like taking bad tasting medicine. They're never going to be exercisers and they're never going to love it. But if it gets them to where they want to be and doing the things that they do love, or they've stopped because they were too difficult, they don't have to keep going with the exercise because then they're doing the activity.
Yeah.
And it's part of a process. If you enjoy exercise for its own sake, then go at home, to a gym, to a group, to a park, and be more active. But if it's going to get you to somewhere, you may not always love it, but if you may love the thing that it gets you to do.
Yeah, I like that. That sums it up nicely. So obviously we are, hopefully, fingers, my legs are crossed already, starting to see the way out of this pandemic. And I have a theory that we could see a big change in the number of injuries that crop up due to people's working exercise habits have changed drastically over the last 12 months. So what would you have any tips for people who may have their activity levels have dropped? So for example, we often see a lot of people who commute to London and that they may be walking 5-6 miles a day around London, not realise that's what they're doing between the train station, the tube station and work. But now they're not doing that at all. And okay, they may not be going back to the office after lockdown, but they may look to start increasing their activity levels, get back out on the golf course, get back on the football pitch. What would your tips be for people to try and reduce the risk of them having to come see people like us?
I think it's start gradually, recognise that if you have stopped doing something, you can't jump straight back to what you were doing before. It's a graded build-up process. So if your steps have gone from 10,000 to 2,000 because you're working from home, it's going to be, as we were talking about before, that increased jump. If you go straight back to 10,000, that's going to be a shock to the body. If you can, if you're one of those people, find something that you enjoy. Do it with a friend, do it with some family, but be consistent. Do things regularly. There's a little bit of a saying like doing exercise is like going on a sunbed. If you want to get getting a suntan, if you want to get a suntan, you don't go out in the sun for as long as possible, do as much as you possibly can, and then suffer for the next 3 or 4 days because you're sunburnt. So don't do that with exercise. Do a little bit, then do a little bit more, and then do a little bit more, and in 3 or 4 weeks' time, you may have the exercise that you want or the suntan that you want, and it's happened gradually over time.
Yep.
More isn't always better.
And then, obviously, when some people will start getting back to activity, they may get a few DOMS, so delayed onset muscle soreness, or niggles, at what point would you then recommend someone seeking medical advice on what to do compared to actually this may just be just a bit of general soreness because you've got moving again, you haven't been used to it?
If you're not used to it, it's difficult to tell the difference sometimes, but DOMS will settle down 2 or 3 days, you get back to normal, and then you can do it again, and it eases off. If you find that it's not easing off, if it's sharp, if it's getting worse, and it's coming on sooner, then that's the time to go and seek some professional advice. But
Okay.
expect some little stiffness and aches and pains. They are a normal part of training, and if you speak to any athlete, probably the higher the athlete is in their career, the more aches and pains they have all the time.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've just been lifting some weights and my lower back sort of aches slightly. It's not an injury. It's just because I've just been lifting a bit heavier weights than my body is used to. But I need to do that to help get myself stronger and keep pushing myself forward and moving myself forward. So with regards to if someone was, say, coming in to see you and they've got, say, lower back pain or a shoulder problem, what's the sort of experience and journey they would expect to see to have coming to see someone like yourself?
So I think we need to do a full assessment of what they've been doing and where they're coming from and how this is lost. So we need to make sure it's safe and that it's a musculoskeletal problem and there's nothing else going on. So we need to make sure that we get that cleared out of the way and do the tests to assess that. And then it's going to be an exercise program. So whether that is some movement, some strength training, but it needs to be gradual, but it needs to progress. And I've worked with people that have seen people in the past. I've got my exercise program. How long have you had that for? Oh, 2 years. Whatever it is needs to move forwards and it needs to progress to make a difference. So it needs to be a progressive, dynamic program. It shouldn't stay the same.
No, and we're really excited to have you on board because you've got this breadth of knowledge and experience working with the sort of military and then to sort of the elite level of the military, and then back in the NHS, then with the older generation, then working in the commercial sector. So I'm not sure there's really any sort of type of injury or patient demographic that you haven't treated.
I haven't thought about it like that, but yeah, probably quite right. Some hard in the military. We expect people to fall over and be a bit fatigued and tired. But for occupational health, there's a level that people need to work to. Exercise, physical and mental health is just such a good thing across the board for everybody.
And then I also forgot to mention, it isn't just the exercise rehabilitation stuff. Did you do a postgraduate diploma or sort of certificate?
Yes.
Also
because I found exercise, working with athletes who are motivated, who are keen to do the exercises we want them to do, they're quite easy because they'll do them. But someone who's a bit scared and a bit cautious, maybe has had some long-term problems and thinks that exercise isn't for them, then we have to talk in a different way about behaviour and what would be helpful. So I found it quite difficult to just give them an exercise program and expect it to work. So I needed a different way of approaching that, and I found that the cognitive behavioural therapy and looking at thoughts and beliefs and approaching it from a slightly different direction was very helpful.
And it is very, very topical at the moment within the musculoskeletal world, particularly around back pain. And actually, even with any sort of tendon issues, people's beliefs, like we hear it on a daily basis, and people will make passing comments of, oh, I can't do this because it will hurt my back, or I can't do this because of X, Y, and Z. And I think it is really important that we sort of get on top of that from a treatment perspective, really from early on, and help address those beliefs. So I remember I had a patient once where they're like, I can't do this because it's going to hurt my toe. 10 minutes later, I had them loading 80 kilos through that foot and their toe didn't hurt. And you just look on their face and it's almost like their penny dropped there and then, thinking, oh, I can actually do this and it's not going to hurt. And it's doing that in that safe environment within the clinic where we're here to help support them through it, and they know that they can do it. And you then see that, and then you see that change in that person immediately, and you just watch them fly, and it's an amazing process. It's why I do what I.
Yeah, that's why
I
we do
do.
it, and to be able to make those changes, the strength that they've already got, and probably use in things that they don't fear. But as we mentioned earlier, well, I don't lift anything heavy, or I've stopped doing anything heavy. Well, we know that becoming weaker and stiffer with lower activities, if those things are thought to be threatening or worrying or going to cause back pain, it's quite understandable that somebody doesn't. But actually, is it helpful to do that? And to have those discussions and bring out the worries really can be quite useful.
Yeah, no, thank you very. Have you got any questions for me or anything you want to add?
No, I'm very excited to be here. I think there's so much interesting things, so many good plans. I'm really excited to get going.
No, well, thank you very much for coming on and having a chat with us. It's a little daunting. Like, you literally start, you look at your week plan I give you, day 2, you're like jumped in filming a podcast, and it's sort of like chucked in at the deep end. So no, thank you very much. And we're just super excited to have David here. He's going to help us build. We're going to, NK Active is branching out to offering, now we can help treat the whole body, whereas before we were just doing lower limb. Now we can do upper limb as well. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. If you've got any comments or queries or questions for myself or David, pop them in the comments below and we shall get back to you. Next episode is, we are going to be chatting with Tabitha, who was our second student that we had on a 6-week placement from Southampton University, and just chat to her about her experience of coming in and what it's like being a student and then coming in on placement. So we look forward to seeing you then. As always, thank you for listening. Take care, and we shall see you at the next episode. Bye.